Welcome to Talking Giants player profiles and projections, starting off week 3 of this series. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, Justin Pennick. We're presented by John Boy Media. And Justin, we got two guys who are not necessarily slated as starters, but I think two guys who will have decent roles on this team, Dion Lewis and Ryan Connolly. How you doing, my man?
Bobby Skinner, hello. This is the third week, the start of the third week of our PPP player profile preview, player profile, and projections, however you want to say it, series. It's been a lot of fun. We're also up on YouTube, which is really, really cool. I put all the PPPs in like a 2020 PPP playlist. So if you're behind, or even if you're on the podcast app, if you're behind, binge us, and also go listen to our Stapleton interview, which was a lot of fun last Friday. So you have a lot of content to binge if you're behind. We've been putting out content every day.
We'll have the Ross Cockrell episode out tomorrow. Can we start calling them pew pew pews instead of PPPs? PPPs doesn't sound good if I just call them pew pew pews.
I like that because I've always wondered, like, if anybody gets really disturbed by saying PPP because there's two PPP. P's in it. I wonder if anybody PPP. Just gets uncomfy. I do get a little uncomfy.
All right, let's get into it, though. Dion Lewis. Justin, he's 5'8", 195 pounds. He'll be 30 years old when the season starts. In 2011, he was drafted in the 5th round with the 149th overall pick. Signed with the Giants this offseason on a 1-year, $1.5 million deal. What do you got on the cat?
Yeah, so my little fun fact about Dion Lewis, it's not really about his personal life, but in terms of his football career and how his, I think, rise in New England came about, I think that's very interesting because you look at his Pro Football Reference page, it goes back to 2012. Now, you remember those, Atlanta Falcons years and the Patriots where, they were playing in the Super Bowl. That was around 2015, 2016, 2017. Those were the years that he was pretty prominent with New England. But his playing career goes back to 2012. He was drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles. So he played 9 games with the Eagles, a total of 60 offensive snaps, and a little bit of special teams as well. But then in 2013, he's traded to the Cleveland Browns. He fractures his fibula, so he misses the entire 2013 season. Then he's cut. Then Indianapolis signs him, but they release him in September, so he doesn't play at all throughout the 2014 season. And then New England signs him to like a futures reserves deal. So 2013, 2014, he doesn't play the game of football. And then here comes New England, and they make all these smart, conniving and these cutting moves where they just find players wherever. They found Dion Lewis, and he's had a pretty darn good NFL career since then for a running back. And they signed him, and like I said, he's had a good career. He even played with Tennessee last couple years as well. Glad he's on the Giants, Bobby. Let's actually get to him before we get too nitty-gritty into him.
Yeah, let's look at some stats. Last year, he had 54 carries, 209 yards, 1 touchdown, 3.9 yards per carry, 25 catches for 160 yards. The year before, he had 155 carries, 517 yards, and a touchdown, 3.3 yards per carry, 59 catches, 400 yards, a touchdown on 88% catch rate, which is good. What got him that contract in Tennessee in 2017, he had 180 carries for 900 yards, 6 touchdowns, 5 yards per carry. That's how he got that contract in Tennessee. Justin, so the run game, the stats are not good. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're a backup, you need to be hitting 4 yards per carry minimum. He was under that these last 2 years. So the running yards are not good. But I went and watched some film because, Gallman, that's been my complaint about him. Is like he can't even crack 4 yards per carry. He doesn't know how to do anything besides just hit a hole, and he's not shifty at all, at least to me. You go watch Gallman, and he's a very shifty player. He breaks tackles, Justin. In fact, I looked, Dion Lewis. In 2018, Justin, I looked. He was 15th in the NFL in broken tackles, and there was only one guy ahead of him on the list who had less carries than him, and most of them had like 80, 90 carries more than him. So he breaks a bunch of tackles in diverse ways, where it's a juke, a spin, and sometimes the little guy will run through people. So that was intriguing. And you go look at like Derrick Henry's stats where he had the most yards after contact. Like, you think about that Titans team as a run team, and honestly, Derrick Henry had to do a lot of it on his own because of how many times he had to break tackles and get yards. So that Tennessee offensive line wasn't stellar for them. Like, their yards before contact were in like the 1.4 range. They weren't very good. So he's shifty, and that's what we need out of our backup running back, is someone who can just be a playmaker, not someone who's gonna, come and be a bruiser or anything. We just need a playmaker, which Gallman really wasn't.
You're actually kind of spot on about that, about the offensive line, about Tennessee, because if you look in the alley rankings, the adjusted line yards on Football Outsiders, those rankings basically try to measure offensive line production, and they're kind of middle of the pack. And can I just say, these last couple episodes of PPPs, you're bringing in like these, not just like looking at volume stats, but like broken tackles, depth of target. You even, well, it was really with Patrick Graham that you brought in the depth of target stat. I'm feeling threatened. I'm feeling threatened with your ability to bring in these analytics right now, Bobby.
I told you, like, people feel like, oh, Bobby's anti-analytics. Like, no, I'm just pro film. I like analytics, and I'm trying to learn analytics more and more. Okay, because it'd be ignorant of me to just be like, analytics, PFF. Like, just because I hate PFF doesn't mean I hate analytics.
But that broken tackle stat is huge, and that's not something that I knew. Now, I think one of the reasons why, well, if you're asking, well, why 2018 and why not the rest of his years? Well, 2018, it was kind of an exception for Dion Lewis because he saw
100 more carries, too.
He had 61% of the team's offensive snaps he was on the field for, 600 snaps he was on the field for. There was only one other year besides that year, which was 2017, which he was on the field for more than 400 snaps. And then even 2019, he was on the field for more than 350 snaps. Bobby, I'm projecting Dion Lewis to be around maybe 250 to 300 snaps at most for this Giants team this year. And why I like this signing is you're kind of high on him in his ability to run the ball. He's shifty, he's elusive, he can do...
I'm more high on him in the receiving game than the running game.
I agree. You did say, now you have the right to change your mind because we watched more film and we had an offseason to actually digest. You did say after we initially signed him that you were more excited about him in the running game than the receiving game.
No, I said the opposite.
No, I thought you... I swear to...
I have my first tweet. I don't like the run numbers. No, I don't dislike him in the run, but I like him more in the receiving game, especially when you put him and Saquon on the field at the same time.
And I think that's obvious. I think that's obvious that you like him more in the receiving game compared to the running game. But if you're saying, and I know a lot of people like Wayne Gallman, so if you're saying, well, how is this guy any different than Wayne Gallman besides what he can do catching the ball? Well, it's because of what he can do with catching the ball, because he actually has a clearly defined role as this team's number 2 running back instead of, okay, we're just going to find some Joe Schmo to back up Saquon Barkley, and whenever he's in the game, he's just going to do and he's going to do whatever. When Dion Lewis is actually in the game, Bobby, in 2020, we're going to be expecting him to fill a role and to do a pretty solid job at filling that role, not just being a number 2 backup to Saquon Barkley. Does that make sense in how he's different than Wayne Gallman?
He can make plays where Wayne Gallman didn't make plays. All he did was one cut and go, which is fine, I guess. But Wayne Gallman was not a playmaker. So yeah, I agree with you. He knows how to break tackles. He does it in diverse ways, whether it's a juke, whether it's a spin, whether it's a little shimmy. Like, he does it in diverse ways, and like you said, in the receiving game, that's where he can make plays. Justin, he started one game last year. I went and looked at those stats. He had 15 carries for 68 yards, 4.5 yards per carry. A lot better than Wayne Gallman's one game, even though he had 2 touchdowns. He didn't play well. Wayne Gallman didn't play well in that game, and he fumbled, and he had a catch for 19 yards in that game. So, listen, he's a guy who's gotten yards after the catch, yards after contact in the run game.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a big fan of Dion Lewis as this number 2 running back, and I think like you said, there's people that like Gallman. To me, it's not a battle. The battle for me is for running back 3.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because Wayne Gallman, it really comes down to role. I know I talk about role. I talked about role with Golden Tate. I talked about role with Sterling Shepard, especially when we're talking about an offense. Guys are filling a role. It's not just about having superstars on this Giants offense, like, let's just say when we had Odell Beckham Jr. a couple years ago. It's about how can good to average solid football players, what role can they provide for a team that is most beneficial for this group? And Dion Lewis is one of those guys that can do that pass catching role perfectly. You mentioned his yards after the catch. He averages around 8 yards after the catch per reception. And why it's partially so high, it's because, and I like this stat, Bobby, his depth of target has been in the negatives the last 2 years. He's catching the ball, and
I was gonna say, I was like, what? I was like, he barely averages 8 yards per catch.
Yeah, because he's catching the ball in the backfield, which, in a way, I don't mind that. Saquon Barkley, different story. You don't want him to just be a dump-off guy. But also, I even rewatched that 2018 game where Tennessee played Philadelphia. If you remember that game, which I won't blame you if you do, but if you have some time, go look up the highlights to that game, because that was just a crazy game. I believe the Tennessee was down by multiple scores. Mariota brought him back. They went to overtime, and then with 10 seconds left in overtime, Mariota throws like not a Hail Mary, but he throws a jump ball in the back of the end zone, and a Tennessee receiver comes down with it, and they win the game. It was a wild game.
I remember that game. Corey Davis had that catch.
Yes, Dion Lewis balled out that game, though. He had I think he had 7 catches and 7 catches on 7 targets. Again, broken tackles. He caught some screens. So, and what you did see is that Derrick Henry and him would be on the field at the same time in almost like this pistol formation. Now, I guess, Bobby, that's my next question. We can talk about it as podcasters about, how cool would it be if Dion Lewis and Saquon Barkley are on the field at the same time? I don't really know if that's realistic, if that's something that Garrett's going to do. I guess we would need to see if Tony Pollard and Elliott were on the field at the same time, no?
I guess we should have done that before the show. We should have just acted like we knew that.
Yeah.
Hopefully there's some split back stuff.
It makes too much sense to not have them on the field at certain times. Even if you put Dion Lewis out as a wide receiver, because they would do that in Tennessee as well.
Or put Saquon as a wide receiver and Lewis as the running back.
Yes, and then you have
because
these guys
one
catching
of
screens.
Jones's big issues was that he didn't go to Saquon often enough, where it's like by the time he came back to Saquon, there really wasn't a play there to be made. So you put Saquon at wide receiver, then you can do some different things. All right, you got anything else on the cat?
Yeah, I do want to say one thing about this. Kind of opens up more or less the screen game. We do know that Eli Manning was abysmal throwing screens, and this not even opens up just running back screens and halfback screens. It opens up wide receiver screens if you're putting Barkley out there or if you're putting Dion Lewis out there. One of the things about Pat Shurmur is that I feel like he didn't throw enough screens, and that those are just easy. Those can be easy 4 or 5 yard gains if you execute it correctly, and that's all quick intermediate stuff. So Dion Lewis, good signing. It opens up a lot of possibilities, but just may not get the snap counts, and he may only get like 30-25% of the snaps, and I'm kind of fine with that.
All right, let's take a break and move on to defense.